Retro.
Yeah.
Electro. Tech.
Oh yeah.
Hey, turn the lights back on. Wow. Retro electro tech. When real audio ruled the world.
Well, hello there once again, ladies and gentlemen. This is Retro Ernest of Retro Electrotech. So on the bench, here I have a Yamaha natural sound stereo receiver, model RX as in Romeo X-ray, V as in Victory, 850. So this unit was brought in by the same customer that brought the Pioneer PL50 turntable that had a problem with the cable. It was behaving intermittently, signal was cutting in and out, it was getting distorted, it was noisy and all that stuff because of a bad cable. There was some other stuff going on with it, but well, that's neither here nor there. But anyways, he brought in his receiver as well, this unit here, just in case the problem wasn't in the cable, or wasn't only in the cable. He wanted me to check the phono stage just in case. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to check the inputs on this and go through and do some basic function testing. He wants me to move forward, and he asked if I could do some basic maintenance, just kind of clean it out, check the controls, if the controls need to be serviced, and I'm also going to check the bias, set the bias, if needed, as needed, whatever. So anyways, I'll do all that. Now, I'm only going to go as far, of course, as servicing the analog controls, the various pots, and some of the push button switches for, like, the speaker switches, and there's a bass switch, a tone defeat, things like that. But as far as the momentary switches, little micro switches, and momentary stuff, like this row up here for the digital sound processing, and then the presets, and then you have your various inputs and all that stuff. I believe those are all momentary switches. I won't screw around with those unless one of them is problematic. Then I may have to schedule just replacing it, especially if it's an input that the customer uses, which I don't think is the case, or else he would have told me about that. But some of those momentary switches, they get fickle, they go bad. Sometimes you got to pull the board and replace one of those little micro switches, momentary switches, whatever, like I said. But I'll just check on that. I'll check the status. I'll go through and do as much function testing and make sure that all those various switches are working, that they're responding when pressed and all that. So I'm going to get into that. I already have the cover off, and let me just go ahead and perform a safe power up. Even though this is a working unit, I always do that anyways, just in case. You never know. It works 100 times for the customer before he brings it in, and then right when I set it on my bench, if I wasn't to adhere to protocol of safe power up, it would end up pooping the bed on my bench, of course, because Murphy's Law and all that, and let out sparks and smoke and make big scary noises and all that. But anyways, so let me go ahead and get to this. Oh, by the way, before I get into it, I didn't mention that this is a 80 watt per channel into 8 ohm unit, produced in right about 1991. So anyways, let me go ahead and move on. Okay, so first thing I want to do is the obligatory stuff. And when I say obligatory, I don't mean it as a complaint, like, oh, it's an obligation and I have to do that. I'm not gonna whine like a little sissy girl, but this is the obligatory stuff that I do repeatedly, over and over again as part of the inspection process. Pop the hood, take a look inside. I always like to do that before I power up a piece of equipment. Like I said, I know this is working, or it was at least when the customer brought it in, but I just want to be sure that there isn't any parts in here that look like they're teetering on the brink of failing, such as electrolytic capacitors, like you see the big filter cans there, things like that. Now, if I open it up and one of those caps was visibly bulged, it looks like it was getting to that point where it's going to fail, it's going to vent open or something like that, or I spot other parts that might look heat stressed, and evident by being discolored, or really kind of getting that charred look to them, or just downright charred, or fractured, or whatever, split open in extreme cases. Or the caps or the electrolytics are leaking, physically leaking electrolyte, at their bases or whatever. So anyways, stuff like that, obvious stuff, wiring, these harnesses, things that have seen better days. But everything so far looks good. As I'm sitting here jaw-jacking about it, I have my eyes in there scanning around, and you guys have seen me, where I bring in the magnifier, my magnified light, and kind of scan around. Well, I'm going to do that when I start getting into things. I'm not going to do that on camera right now because, whatever. I think I really have seen all I need to see right now, considering I know this is a working unit, at least for the most part, and I don't suspect that it's going to fail catastrophically. I don't see anything in here that really raises a red flag, in other words. So as I get into it and start cleaning things out, because there's a lot of dust in here and all that, I'm going to clean all that out, especially before servicing the controls. Depending on how far I go with the controls, that's going to be dictated by, once I start function testing, it's going to be dictated by the behavior of the controls. If the controls are looking good overall, then I may not do much to them other than a light spritz of some contact cleaner and just kind of work them, just for the sake of a little future proofing, so to speak. But if I do see intermittent behavior in some of the controls, or a little noise, static, or especially intermittent behavior where I'm getting signal cutting in and out when I'm working some of the controls, then yeah, I'll go deeper on the servicing, of course. But anyways, yeah, that's the first thing. So I'm gonna go into the safe power up now, get signal in it, get the oscilloscope hooked up, and then start working the controls and see if I see any bad behavior again when I work the controls, any noise on the waveforms produced by the controls, any intermittent behavior produced by the controls, anything like that. And then I'll go around to the back side here, and let me just pan around. And as a matter of course, it's just part of basic maintenance. I'll clean all the I'll clean all the inputs, give them a nice solvent cleaning and whatnot. So anyways, so let me go ahead and move along and get to it. Okay, as you can see, everything's powered on, and obviously that went okay. On the current limiter, everything was looking good. So I have a signal in it, and I have it hooked up to the scope. So let me go ahead and redirect the camera over to the scope as I go through some of the basic controls. I'm not going to go through all of the controls on camera via the oscilloscope and the oscilloscope view and all that, because it would just take too long. I am going to check the various functions, as I said, to the best of my ability as far as the time I have to work with and whatnot, test everything out. But otherwise, let's go ahead and get to the scope display. Okay, so I have the light overhead turned off over the bench because it's an LED light and it has a tendency to produce noise in some equipment more than others. But anyways, here's a display. Let me start with the volume control. I'm going to go through several of these controls. Some of them I'll do off camera when I'm testing various functions, as I mentioned a moment ago. But let me start with the volume control. Obviously, bring the signal up, and yeah, you can see that we have some, I'll just bring it up nice and tall there. You see we have some asymmetry between channels. That's not uncommon. You see that a lot. So the yellow traces the right channel, blue is the left, of course, and that asymmetry could be for numerous reasons. Sometimes it originates in the volume pot. Sometimes with these stereo pots, it could be a mechanical misalignment between the wipers. Some pots that can be resolved. Sometimes those wipers can be adjusted a little bit, and so they sync up better with each other. I've done that here and there. Sometimes it's not so easy to do that. And sometimes it could be the resistive elements, the resistive tracks themselves. There could be differences in the in the resistances between both halves. Just like any resistor, sometimes these things drift, and there could be other issues going on with the resistive track to cause some differences between the channels. And in fact, sometimes the differences will be more noticeable at different volume levels. Sometimes you'll see more deviation between the two channels at a lower volume, but sometimes when you bring the volume up, they kind of sync up better and things sort of iron out. Yeah, it just depends. So the point I'm getting at is that sometimes it could be in the volume control, and sometimes some of the other controls can cause that, especially if they're dirty or whatever the case. And yeah, and of course sometimes it could be that difference between the channels can originate in the preamp section and the amplifier section if there's something going on there and there's something producing a little bit of diminishment. Until you would go in and spend the time sussing out that kind of a problem, which can get a little time consuming, then you're not going to know for sure. But anyways, it's not unusual, and a deviation like this, it's really not something to worry about, to really write home about. For the most part, it's not something that's going to be real noticeable unless you have the hearing of a German Shepherd times 10. Then you might pick up on a little difference between the two channels, but yeah, doubt it. Anyways, not a big deal. That's not a big old deviation, but let me go ahead and mess with some of the other controls. I'll start with the balance control. And that control, and I'll just go through it really slow. That's really clean. There's no noise in that control. And let me mess around with the treble control here. Again, I'm not going to inject a square wave and mess around with the tone controls. I'm just looking for noise or intermittent behavior or bass control. I'm just messing with that. That's not bad either. Not bad. Okay. Here's our tone bypass switch. Yeah, that one's a little jumpy and kind of intermittent there. See that? Yeah, of course you can. Okay, and here's our speaker switches A and B. Yeah, that's bad. That one's really bad. In fact, yeah, it seems to be affecting the right channel there. The yellow trace a little bit more than the other channel. I'm just working, exercising it a little bit, see if I can temporarily clear it up a little bit. That's a little bit better, but anyways, I'll go in and work on that. Yeah, the rest of the switches are just inputs in the digital processing, the station presets and all that. Tuning up and down and memory, tuning mode, AM, FM, all that. Okay, otherwise the only other switches that I'm really concerned with, at least right now, is whether or not these input selectors are working okay and they're responsive. In other words, if I switch over to phono, okay, we see the light indicating that it's activating. Okay, CD, tuner, tape 1, DAT, tape 2, whatever, VCR, LD, TV, VCR1. So they're all responsive. So anyways, that's fine. As far as the station presets and all of these digital processing modes and all that stuff, I'll check that later on when I'm messing around with the tuner and all that. I'm not going to program presets and whatnot. Okay, so I have access to all the controls. The face was removed, obviously. Okay, so a little bit involved getting all this done, plus the metal chassis, which I have folded back, setting up here, had to be removed as well, so that I can have access to the boards. Now they're just floating there. I have everything ready for drainage with rags and all that, so I can do a good thorough job on the controls, even though the controls ain't too horrible except for a few switches. But I just want to do it right, be thorough about it, and sort of future-proof these controls a little bit. Once I get that all wrapped up, I'll get this back together, of course, and check on the bias, set it as needed, go around the back once again, clean the inputs, outputs, and then I'll be ready for power testing and conclude with some audio testing, just a brief audio test, which I know everything's going to be okay, but I'm going to do it anyways. So let me go ahead and get to it. Alright, so I'm just going to start with an initial blast. I'm using a hooked applicator to get to the underside of these pots. Well, underside when the board is installed, but top side, since I have these things angled the way I have them angled. Let me situate this applicator a little bit better. Okay, there we go. Let me just get in there. A little blast. Got it hooked in there. Another little blast. I'm going to do that on all of these just to get some solution in there and let the little soak process begin, just to loosen up any gnarliness in there. Just dust accumulation, stuff like that. Like I said, these aren't too bad, but let me move this. This film cap here is in my way. I need to bend it over a little bit. So, okay, I'm in the port. All right. All right, and then I'm just going to start by exercising these things a bit, like I always do. I'm not going to do this too long on camera. Just want to get the process started here, because I'm going to make a few passes and flood them out, do a few passes. And that's about it. So just a lot of shaft rotation back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Same old stuff. But as I always say, that's what it takes to do a thorough job. A little bit more future proofing there when you put the time into it and really flush them out good, as opposed to just a quick spritz at an angle that you can barely access the pot. You can't get the solution in there real good unless you can do what I'm doing and have access and tilt the boards and all. Of course, it's good if you can just remove the pots, but it's not necessary for this to remove the pots and really work them that way, but it's pretty good. So I'm going to do a lot of that, and then also too, I have access ports into these switches, so let me flood them with solution. Okay. And then work these. Over and over and over again. Okay. Then our speaker switch is over here, and I'm going to be going just back and forth, working back and forth on all these controls till I'm satisfied that they're nice and clean. I have the volume pot over here too that I haven't hit yet, but I'm going to get to that and work that as well. So just a lot of that, guys, just back and forth, and then I'll follow up by a little drop of fader lube in each, and work them again, distribute the small amount of lubricant that I am going to add, and then these things will be good to go, and will probably hold up for quite a bit of time, as opposed to just a quick spritz and all that. Because sometimes when you do that, the problem comes back. If there is problems, if you're dealing with some really bad, nasty controls, if you just spritz them real quick and just work them, sometimes that temporarily resolves the issue, but the problem will come back if you really don't flush them out multiple times and work loose any garbage that's in there, including old degraded lubricants that may have been applied. So otherwise, that's about it. I'll come back once I have these all finished, and probably when I have this all put back together. Okay, she's all back together, so I'm going to go ahead and redirect the camera to the scope, do a quick power test, see what this is putting out, and then I'll get on to testing some audio. Okay, so I'm going to bring it up to clipping and back it off just a little bit out of clipping. So let's get this show on the road. There we are. Let's back it off out of clipping just a bit. And it looks like we're doing right about 96.5 watts. Pretty good for an 80 watt per channel receiver. So it's looking good. Let me pipe in some audio. Okay, so I'm going to test a few functions with audio. The phono stage, because you remember the original reason why the gentleman brought this unit in is because his turntable had a problem, an intermittent cable, all that. He wasn't sure if it was only that or if there was something wrong with the phono stage on the receiver. So I'm not going to play any vinyl into the phono stage. I have a low level sine wave, I think at about 4 millivolts. So I'm just going to do that so everybody can see that the phono stage is working. So let me. Okay, so no problems there. Nice and quiet, nice and clean. And I have some YouTube music piped in the back. This thing has a really good sound. I was listening to some other stuff just a moment ago, other than the YouTube music. I think I had some Alison Krauss, one of her CDs piped into it, and a very high quality recording. And this thing sounds really, really nice. But anyways, let me go ahead and get started with some YouTube music. Okay, so that's good enough. Yeah, it has a very nice sound to it. So that's about it. I'm going to test some other stuff, do a few more things. The tuner is working, all that, but I'm not going to demonstrate everything on camera. So good enough. All the controls are working absolutely smooth. And yeah, there you go. So I'm going to end it here, guys. Thank you for following along. As I always say, peace, love, music, and the vintage audio that brings it to your ears. Till next time. Y'all take care. This has been a Spinning Head production.